Tacko Fall, what's his future in the NBA with the way the game is now?
The game has changed. You're not going to have low post players anymore. 20 years ago, he'd be a lottery pick.
He's a crowd favorite, and to be honest, in the making of this video, I was absolutely able to see why. He has a very high potential and could end up being one of the most dominant big men in the league. But I want to address the elephant in the room. Tacko Fall. In addition to that, today I also want to talk about how he has become a meme.
Tuesday somewhere, so you know what that means. It's Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, we get it, he's tall. Yo, what is up guys? It's your favorite coach's favorite editor, Dre, and welcome to episode 2 of our new series where I explore some of the cultural phenomena and politics in today's NBA. And if you have any feedback or want to reach out, hit that link below. I always make sure to respond within 24 hours. But I don't want to waste any time, so we're just gonna jump right into it with this one. Oh, and if you haven't already, go ahead and drop a like, cause those can help. In 1979, one of the biggest sports rivalries was born. For years, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, the Celtics and Lakers, would be a matchup the world wanted to see. In many respects, this rivalry brought a renewed sense of interest and quite literally could have saved the NBA. Flash forward 41 years, it's 2020, and a very similar dynamic is taking place.
MVP chance here at Staples Center.
Tacko Fall and Alex Caruso. Two spectacles, sensations in the basketball world, competing to be the most legendary and iconic role player of all time. Okay, they could end up being a lot more than key role players, but for the sake of this video and since I've already made this mix, well, let's just go with it for now.
Oh, he caught a body! It's exciting when there are multiple teams that... Oh my, that's exciting. Oh, he jammed it. Did he take off from the free throw line? He caught a body! Okay. Oh, he caught a body!
How far away was he from the basket when he took off? 10 feet?
We'll have to wait till next year to remember that. Comes again!
Some are saying this year's All-Star team may rival the 1996 Bulls. They are being called the Meme Dream Team. So, who are two of the top candidates in the All-Star game currently? The answer might just surprise you. Well, yeah, they are. For better or for worse, the basketball community seems to be divided as to if the internet might be taking the memes too far on this one. The nature of All-Star games can be tricky because the fans want more than a less than competitive game with a few highlights from the same guys we're used to seeing highlights from that ultimately has no consequence in the real season, only to be permanently overshadowed by a mediocre pregame national anthem. And so it is, while sometimes the picks are not the most expected or traditional, as long as fans have any stake in choosing the All-Stars, we can assume their votes will serve as a failsafe to keep the nominations interesting and unorthodox. And well, let's just say with two of this year's top choices, they are certainly delivering. Alright guys, in all seriousness, before we start, some of you might recognize this video. If you haven't watched it yet, I would go check it out. I'll link it right there. But basically, I explored and took an in-depth look at what it was that made Alex Caruso a viral phenomenon. And what I was able to find was that through a combination of hard work, unique playstyle, and of course, a few memes, Alex, very similar to Tacko, has become an NBA icon. So I want to settle this once and for all and delve into what exactly it is that gives Tacko Fall, at face value, a polar opposite athlete, an equally fascinating aura. And to do this properly, we need to efficiently cover the two things that can serve as a predictor for Tacko's long-term successes and how they also add to his current day swagger. The first, obviously, being his overall talent. So let's start with that. He's averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 11 assists per game. Now, LeBron James is obviously putting up some great numbers this year. But what about Tacko Fall, you might ask? Well, I'm not going to talk too much about his numbers because they hardly exist. Although in college, he did manage to pull off a career 10 points and 7 rebound average in only 23 minutes. I think the best way to understand Tacko's NBA potential is to take a look at the stereotypical comparison. And you guessed it, Boban Marinkovic. But if you know anything about us, we tend to stay away from the stereotypical comparison. So before we discuss who is a much more fair comparison in my opinion, I will address some of the major talking points comparing the two, just to give you guys a much more complete context. Some of the major concerns with Boban were obviously his athleticism, he's a bit slow to change direction and gather himself before post moves, injury, and of course his shooting ability. And even though he was able to prove himself roster-worthy in an NBA that's become much more in favor of versatile big men that could stretch the floor, he still struggles to get any playing time. And all of these are obviously concerns for Tacko as well. On a brighter note, he's currently the most efficient player in NBA history by points per shot attempt. Yet, as far as the measurables go, Boban is considerably smaller. I actually made this to scale, so check it out. Obviously a noticeable difference in height, it's about 3 to 4 inches depending on the source, yet still you can't see the 6+ inches he has in wingspan and the 7+ in standing reach, which is actually quite amazing because, in my opinion, Tacko does move much more swiftly on top of being heavier and bigger than Boban. So, in theory, his potential could be much higher, especially if he could develop some of those skills Boban wasn't completely able to, or at least allowed to. However, there is a key difference between the two that could end up being a very significant factor in Tacko's rotation on the court. And although this phrase is slightly less catchy than the original, Hacka Tacko, it could be just as effective. Tacko Fall shot just 36% from the free throw line this past season. But what about his shot beyond the arc? Well, considering he only took one crack at a three-point shot his entire college career, and a handful of deep twos, I guess those are wild cards as well. The two obviously both make up for any shortcomings in the paint, which at least in the present moment is where Tacko is going to have to show he's NBA ready, if not also dominant. He's also going to have to be a world-class rebounder and defender before anything else, let alone a point guard.
Probably not a good idea.
Okay, so I feel with Tacko Fall, the media is especially desperate to compare him to someone currently in the NBA, which is really no surprise because a lot of the comparisons being thrown around have few parallels. He's an outlier. No one can really know who he could turn out to be, which doesn't sit well in a narrative-driven media. He reminds me of a relatively mobile giant rim protector, similar to the Dikembe Mutombo type. If his team can understand how to use him and thinks outside the box, he could be a huge advantage. His mobile size caused problems for Duke and Zion last year, and what should have been an easy win for the Blue Devils turned into a closely contested battle. Offensively, there's simply not many 300-pound players in the league, period. He is a walking mismatch in a small ball generation. I don't think this video would feel complete unless I added a quick disclaimer. So, for the 1% watching that aren't Tacko fans, why aren't you Tacko fans? Alright, but seriously, the disclaimer starts in... Yes, it's also apparent he struggles in transition basketball because of his rather poor conditioning, and as of right now, it's hard to imagine him playing more than 20 minutes a game. His lateral movement is sluggish, which could be disastrous, especially when matching up against someone like, I don't know, this guy, or this guy, or this guy. His shot outside the paint doesn't exist, kind of like his handles. His rebounding, which is also his biggest strength, can prove to be inconsistent at times. And finally, he really hasn't had any real NBA challenge yet, specifically against someone who can contend physically. But, of course, none of this takes into consideration that he's Tacko Fall, so it's irrelevant at best. But here's where it gets interesting. Something else that could be factored into Tacko's potential is Tacko himself. Now, on top of being 16 and speaking zero English when moving to the US, maintaining a 4.0 GPA in high school and a 3.6 in college, being fluent in 4 languages, and graduating with 2 majors in business and psychology, he has also found himself in the midst of an internet frenzy, which we all know can typically manifest into memes, which then gives me something to talk about, so thanks Tacko. But to understand how Tacko has become a meme, we must first understand the nature of memes themselves. Well, some define memes as a lifestyle or a way of life, others view it as an art. I've even seen them compared to a fine wine or a cure to depression. But personally, I see a meme as a reflection of a cultural phenomenon that almost always serves as a symptom of a deeper societal circumstance or craving. Obviously, in this case, said craving is most likely for a hero story, in which the main character, against all odds, finds himself in a sort of promised land, the NBA. He's humbled, yet hardly at the beginning of his journey, and an uncertain journey at that. We can all sympathize with an underdog, especially one as lovable and soft-spoken as Tacko Fall or Alex Caruso. Therefore, it really becomes an easy choice. So I ask again, why exactly has Tacko Fall become a meme? Well, 'cause he's 7'6", duh.